It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question. We get a ton of these here at Peace and Harmony, but this one is Peace and Harmony. After I have been through all these ups and downs with this relationship, it's been over 20 years. How can I learn to trust myself? There's more information than that, but that's really the bottom line. I think that's a great viewer question because that it really calls into context the key emotional healing and mental clarity that needs to take place, sort of getting through the work, which I would say which involves that of beginning to trust yourself again, or trust in self. This is basically part of the wounding action or result if you're in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath. Invariably, there's going to be some time in the course of the relationship where you might find out some unsavory information. Not just a little lie, not just a little grievance, but something of really altering or oftentimes life-changing proportions, which means you just found your spouse is cheating on you. Your business partner is cheating on you. This individual has taken advantage of you and exploited you, has been opportunistic, has gotten access to your computer or your finances, or has created a devaluation or things that you have previously held dearly, you no longer hold dearly. In other words, you've lost sight of your values, or there's been some life-altering negative adverse impact emotionally that continues really over, I would say, 2 weeks as a result of this. And how do you begin to trust yourself again is a key and crucial state that you really focus on what trust is, what it feels like, what it sounds like, what it looks like, what it smells like, especially as it is within yourself, and realize oftentimes why lack of trust in self or distrust in self perpetuates the fear and the anxiety, that physiological state that those people are really thrust into as a result of being in a relationship with a narcissist, someone who's taken advantage of them for their own ends, their own means, their own convenience, their own satisfaction, and the other individual has experienced really a lack of empathy or a lack of being heard, felt, reasoned with, related to in many forms, and creating a very profound splinter or oftentimes injury, sort of not just hurt your feelings, but really to the point of your I am and your sense of strength and stability and what you deserve, otherwise known as positive self-regard, faith in self, self-trust, having a warmth as you relate to yourself. So this becomes a very cold and calloused experience. I would say people would, I would say, in some degree of the relationship, depending on where you are, you're going to experience some degree of coldness and emptiness. You might go home from being with a person and you feel very empty. You feel very lethargic. You feel, oh no, not again. But yet you can't really think your way through to a solution or pull yourself up very quickly. You're feeling de-energized, disempowered. This is, a lowering of your standards and your boundaries when you are around these people, because they sort of commandeer you, sort of take you over by force through extracting what they need from you and not giving you respect in return. Respect, it's kind of like you're there, but they just sort of keep going past you. And they don't really, there is a disconnect. If you're dealing with a lack of empathy, there's not going to be feeling of equal or fair exchange. It involves things like eye contact, agreement, understanding of terms, getting clear data about people, places, situations, and things. Just things are nebulous or twisted. The narcissist will lie on a repeated and pathological basis, and oftentimes I think they kind of elevate themselves when they do this, just because they can, and they have no fear really of the consequences. And it's not just, some people, they don't always get things right. It's not like it's done intentionally. I mean, for myself, for example, if I say a joke or I get some fact wrong, it's not done intentionally to manipulate. Maybe, I might, people are human, they make mistakes. But we're talking about intentional hurt, intentional lying, intentional keeping you in the dark, intentionally, giving others the jab and then pointing at you when you walk by. This is just classic narcissistic and psychopathic behavior, although we're all talking on a spectrum. But you will learn to, I think in the course of the relationship, you learn to distrust yourself. In other words, you allow this other individual to become more important, and that you kind of trust them explicitly. How many people have felt that they have sort of trusted this person, sort of given themselves over to this person implicitly? In other words, they value this person. This person was like a savior. This person was a satisfactor of your needs when you were down, but yet in the course of the relationship, you found other than that which was reliable to be so. And there then became a experience that of distrust of self, I would say, is required once there's someone in one's life who transgresses your boundaries or your standards and doesn't allow you a sense of self and security and respect. So in other words, they don't have to reverence you, but there's a respect, like an acknowledgement, which isn't cast down with shadows and with condescension just on a normal everyday. In other words, there's a feeling, people call it evil, dark, demonic, hurtful, scary, terrorizing, something I don't understand. It's cold. There's, a lot of viewers' way that they have described this. But I would say that there is, in the beginning of the love bombing, there's the sort of taking you on as a supply, which means a supply, just like you need supplies or office supplies. Like I need a pen or paper. They sort of take people on as supplies that you are there to sort of give to them. And for people who have been in the relationship for some period of time, you might have figured out what it is. You're giving them your time. You're giving them your money. You're scratching their back. You're giving them your contacts. You are, what are you giving them? There is usually something that they need, that there is something that they want in the course of the relationship, and then they will tell you whatever it is that you want to hear in order to keep you staying in the relationship. And this then becomes, lying, pathological lying and manipulation, covering things up, deception, violation, high-risk behavior, which then becomes disrespecting of you, or, the high-risk behavior requires you to violate your own values, your own self-respect, your own needs, really what you truly need to be individual, independent, and autonomous. So we're talking really about a state of independence, which is known as, and then to feel comfortable in this, which becomes known as trust. To be able to live with trust within yourself. I trust myself. I am reliable. I trust myself. I have a sense of serenity. I trust myself. I have been able to create solutions or fixes here, and I trust myself. Versus, I distrust myself. I've, and then you usually will, there is a learning to distrust self, I would say, if you are in a manipulative relationship, because there's something you have to forego, which is your inherent positive sense of self-regard in order to maintain that relationship. It is a sacrificial, whether it's conscious, unconscious, it is what is required in the relationship. If someone is going to exploit another, in other words, they're looking to you for support. You're supporting them in some way, not mutually. which is the problem. There is no mutual give and take or standards. It's usually in a context with many double standards that cause you then to distrust yourself. When you wanted to say no, and then they said, "Oh, well, come on," or "Don't," and then you learn to deny oneself. I think there's many opportunities then where those who are feel victimized and who have been targeted by those who are manipulative, those who seek to instill fear, doubt in the other person, make you feel that you're unloved, unwanted, that there's something inherently wrong, or shame. I mean, we're talking about really toxic, life-altering experiences and emotional states, which become very painful, disempowering, and will seek to ruin, will attempt to ruin other people's lives for weeks, months, years, if not decades, until you only sort of pop your head above the surface and go, wait a second, I don't have to live this way. I don't have to live in fear all the time. This is corrupted, this is corrupting me or corroding me from the inside. My identity is not strong. It is not self-protective. I don't have a feeling of boundaries and standards. So if these have been removed, through enmeshment, if these have been removed through trauma bonding, if these have been removed through being a source of supply to a narcissist or a psychopath, then you have to understand that's why you feel emotionally bankrupt. That's why you feel spiritually bankrupt. That's why you do not have a sense of serenity or peace within, because sort of it's like allowing, someone was there vandalizing your insides. They were, wreaking havoc. They were wreaking chaos. It was engineered chaos. It was oftentimes that's who they are, and it is inflexible. And oftentimes, if you're really enmeshed in a relationship, there's a feeling that you can't get away, either through the way the relationship is structured, if you're living or working with this person, or the feeling that you must think about them all the time. That's really the hallmark of a psychopath, is they want to press that fear button. They want to push your buttons, so consistently and so irreverently that you're living in sort of a chronic sense of fear, and then you need to think about them all the time. And it might have gone from the love bombing in the beginning, where you're thinking about them all the time, to then worried and wondering, and then you're thinking about them all the time. So you can really know if you're in a relationship with a manipulator, if you feel like you have to think about them all the time. And this breaks people down. This wears people down. They become nervous wrecks. They become fatigued. They become stressed out. They experience post-traumatic stress. This becomes repeated exposure to a traumatizing experience again and again and again. But yet they can't identify it as trauma because they are mistakenly identifying it as love. So love hurts, love hurts, love hurts, and then it just pretty soon it hurts, and then you're not getting any sort of good stuff. You're not going where you need, want, or desire, or are capable of, or have the possibility of. And then people then usually feel a splinter or a divide that, I'm really not where I'm supposed to be in life at this time. They might have an identity crisis or something to that effect. And the experience of a deficit of self-trust, a deficit of positive self-regard, a deficit of having forward-looking statements for yourself and your life become necessary to be put back on your energetic and emotional blueprint. Because if you're always in that fear, distrust state, it's very difficult to look ahead and plan a future. I know we have a lot of viewers here who say, this is part of their main problem is, they feel that they don't have a life, they're dissociated, they're sort of out of tune with their sense of strength, their sense of trust in self. So that means just like when you get into a car that you can rely on, this is a trustworthy car. So it's just like being in your own life and feeling, hey, this is a trustworthy or reliable life. I can trustworthy and rely on life. So people might have then found themselves where they're not experiencing that. And so you need to sort of find out and then gravitate to where that is. And maybe it's just finding it within yourself. It doesn't mean packing up, hitting the road, and moving, 30 miles down the stretch, down the coast. It might mean looking at and reevaluating your own emotional habits and then really reframing where you're at. So I would say a lack of self-trust is what is learned in a manipulative relationship. You learn not to trust yourself. You learn not to trust your senses. You learn not to speak up about what you've seen. You learn not to speak up about what you've heard. You learn not to speak up about what you have felt. You have learned not to speak up for your rights. You have learned to do without, and that for some reason is some, higher cause, that somehow you going without is what is required for you to survive. And then survival becomes really the only state that becomes a possibility or an option. People are then suffering. I can't make it. I am not going to make it is how they feel. I can't do this. I cannot endure. This is too much. There's something wrong here. And then you really have to deal with it. It comes to that boiling point. It hits the 212 degrees. We got something bubbling here we got to deal with. The pain is great enough. And really part of the healing is learning to understand where you had learned these erroneous feelings, these erroneous thoughts that were required to survive in an abusive relationship or an abusive environment where you felt emotionally oppressed or misunderstood, not understood, intentionally not understood, looked over, treated as if you were unimportant. It didn't matter. No one cared. This is how it is. You were not given a vote. You were not given a chance. You were not given the opportunity. You were not given the possibility. Something occurred where you did not receive or something, and then you had to then forego that sense of self and then self-trust and then feed that positive cycle, feed that positive habit. So that was not only experience, but the flip side or the contrary is then repeated and rememorized, which would then be, you are terrible, you are ridiculous, you are incredible, looks that of hate, looks that could kill, lies that misled you in the wrong direction, not being able to receive the love, the warmth, caring, and nurturing that you needed or wherever it was in the relationship. In other words, you were just without. And this becomes, like there's no heat to boil the water if there's no emotional warmth there. So your love will usually be bubbling from within. In other words, your self-love basically is like, hey, it is in here. That's why I'm riled up. That's why I'm angry. You finally hit a boiling point within yourself. Maybe you can't share that warmth with this person. That might be difficult. That might be problematic, but that might be the case. So you must realize that in the course of the relationship, I would feel in the course of the setting up of a trauma bond, or the setting up of a relationship that causes so much distress to result in post-traumatic stress syndrome. In other words, so much grief, so much loss of feeling of connection to life, feeling so much of an ego death within yourself, feeling an ego death with your sense of opportunity, possibility, where you might go. So that's a grief. This is grief. In psychology, if you go through a loss, you will invariably be overwhelmed or overtaken with grief or fearful. And this feels very much like an attack. So you might have lived under this for some period of time, and you're just now realizing and recognizing it and championing yourself, which just means to acknowledge and validate without judgment what had happened. This is. And then to go from that state and sort of a reclaiming and recovery of sense of self as it relates in the present and to the positive and what is needed, and to become energized and aligned with trusting self in this very moment as it exists in the here and now, right now. It's important to understand that if you don't have trust in self, you will feel like you don't have anything. You don't have anything with yourself. You're an emotional Swiss cheese. You can feel the north wind blowing through. You're feeling alone and, dilapidated emotionally. So you must regain a sense of reliance, self-reliance. You are good and have enough. You are enough. You are enough, whatever, how strong, whatever, enough, ever, and whatever, how you felt that, valley moment. I would say when you felt down, that there was something that you did not have, to really explore that painful moment. In those valley moments, what did it feel that you did not have? And write it down. I feel I did not have someone to listen to me. I feel I did not have someone to guide me, to be a companion. I did not feel I had a confidant. I did not feel I have a friend. I did not have, so what is your fear there? And then come to yourself then with, mature recognition and go, wow, I see where the seeds of contempt or division or isolation were planted. So to really go back very deep there is to see, this is when it started. This is where it began hurting. This is what created the cause that creates the effect. And I can go there now and uproot it now and remove the seeds of that negative feeling. I don't want that negative weed to grow. Sick of watering and pruning the seeds of negativity. I'm not growing a bed of thorns. I'm growing a bed of roses, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to have pain in life, but to have the constant, incessant, and intrusive and debilitating pain is not required. That is when, people, and that is where you really, you learn to distrust yourself in the survival. So you must then learn to embrace trusting self and reliance in self, especially as you tune into your gut and as I deserve it to be so. And I know it to need, even if it's baby steps, it's the baby steps that result in the huge, gigantic steps for you. So not minimizing the baby steps when it comes to trusting yourself, and then, embracing your happy, playful, and confident side. I trust myself too. So how do you experience that? Recovering a sense of self. I trust myself too. I trust myself too. I know and trust myself too. I am certain. When you repeat this, you must repeat this again and again and again. You might even want to write it out 1,000 times. You might even want to speak it out loud. In myself, I trust. In myself, I trust. In love, I trust. In faith, I trust. In my relationships, I trust. In my relationships, I must have trust. In my relationships, I must have empathy and trust. In my relationships, I must have trust and empathy. And this begins with me. So you got to kind of back it up a little bit and sort of go all on and to the wall about this one, where you really got yourself, and to say, I've got you, I've got myself, and sort of be able to back yourself up, especially if you were not able to back yourself up before. Back yourself up now. Oh wow, peace and harmony, you're right, I really did not back myself up then. Back yourself up now and trust yourself. Allow yourself to follow through and bring it to fruition, the cycle of life, so you get that applause. You get that amen. You get that I knew I was right. You get that I'm glad I did this. I believe and trust in my gut now. But oftentimes there's a severing of that when you're in a relationship, a denial of self and a denial of truth, a denial of freedom, a denial of expression, a denial of happiness, a denial of needs that perpetuate that lack of self-trust. So you have to realize how much has gone there to sort of create this repressed situation, and be willing to go the distance for and with yourself. and to go and stay with it, even in the micro decisions. I trust myself and it is okay. I am on my own. It is okay. I have made a good decision. It is okay. I am in support of myself and it is okay. I have this for myself and it is okay. Because if you lack trust in yourself, you'll give your life away very quickly. If you don't value yourself, if you don't trust yourself, if you don't feel yourself to be a person of value, then you will give yourself away. You won't be able to retain. And this is known in psychology really as an imposter syndrome, where people don't, they're complimented and they don't feel that they deserve a compliment. Positive self-regard, or people attracted to them, they will push away these very people because of a negative sense of self that they have learned in the abusive relationship. So be willing to back off those negative habits and trust yourself and realize how important it is, and to stay with it so that you learn and experience the fruits of your labor. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Have a beautiful day.